Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Welcome to this next week of confirmation. We are still at that part in the process where we are talking about what we as Christians do, not just what we believe, but the way of life that makes us who we are. And we have two more Christian faith practices, although I will say that these are not only Christian practices, and maybe that's worth saying about all of these. We are not the only people of faith or the only people who live this way. But these are the things that also we define ourselves by, and these are the things we live by to show our faith. Two more of those today, both of which might sound like very churchy words to you. One of them is stewardship, and the other is Sabbath. Maybe you've heard some of these things before. Stewardship includes a word that we don't use that often anymore. Steward. To be a good steward is someone who manages something well. A steward is kind of a manager, and so stewardship is good management. Sometimes we're talking about money when we talk about that, how we manage our church resources and use them well. But really, it's much bigger than that. It's about how we use all of our God-given gifts well. Some of this goes back all the way to the beginning of our scripture when we're talking about God's creation and the way in which God gives us creation as a gift. However you think about it, however you think it evolved or came from, it still comes to us as a gift. We didn't make it, we didn't earn it, but it is here given to us. And there's a very interesting phrase when the Bible was translated into English from the Hebrew. In Genesis, God says, "Go and have dominion over all the earth." And it was translated about 400 years ago. It was translated dominion into English. That can be unhelpful because when we hear dominion, what else do we hear sometimes? Dominate or domination. When we hear you have dominion over this, you have lordship, it's to say that you can dominate the earth. And sometimes we humans have lived that way, in domination of the earth. But that's not right, and it's not a good translation of that word. What that word means is something closer to stewardship. That it means we are in a place of unique power over creation. We can do creation. We can do this earth great harm, this gift that we've been given. So we need to use that power well. And if we use that power well, if we manage all this well, if we do good things well with it, then we will be good stewards, and this creation will provide for us and for the rest of itself. We will be in harmony. So caring for creation is part of our stewardship as Christians. Of course, that also means caring for one another. Sometimes you'll hear stewardship, as I mentioned a moment ago. Sometimes you'll hear stewardship most often when we do talk about money in church. While we are what's called a not-for-profit, that means we don't make money as a church. We still require money to run, to pay our ministers and our staff and for our building, our teachers, everybody. We're still an organization, in some ways a business, even if a non-for-profit business, that needs money to run, and we are completely funded by our own members. So each year we ask one another to give to our common church, to this faith community, to help us make our ministry happen. So that's part of our stewardship, but as I said before also, it's not only that. Stewardship is about good use of all the gifts that we have been given. All of our talents, all of our resources. How do we use well our whole lives? That's really the question of stewardship. Even with questions like call or vocation, questions that many of you will start answering soon, things like, what would I like to do for work? Or who do I think I am? How would I like to put my gifts to use in the world? Many of these are questions of stewardship. Closely related to the idea of stewardship is the commandment of Sabbath. And Sabbath comes from the Ten Commandments. It comes from a few places, but it's a commandment in the Ten Commandments, the law given by Moses, that commands the people of Israel to rest on the seventh day. 6 days you shall do your work, on the seventh day you shall rest. That day of work and rest is patterned after the story of creation. In 6 days God made the heavens and the earth, and God rested on the seventh day. This is part of our scripture, our testimony that even God needed to rest. And of course we see over and over that even Jesus needs to rest. He goes off by himself to a secluded place to pray and to rest. We all need rest. That commandment comes to the people of Israel. That law, the Ten Commandments, comes to the people of Israel after they had been freed from slavery. And part of the difference of this new life was they would be allowed to rest. And whenever we cannot rest, it means we are held captive by something. Rest is a part of our life. And that extension of rest was not only for those who called themselves God's people, it was for everyone. It was for their whole family. It was for anyone who was working for them. It was anyone who was a foreigner in their land. It was even for the animals. And it was even for the land itself. It was a way of saying all creation needs a time to rest. They would extend this pattern of rest even, as I said, to the land itself, where every 7th year a particular plot of ground that had been used for farming and producing would be allowed to rest. It would not be planted. You would let it what's called lie fallow, which is to say you would let the ground have a year off to restore itself. So this pattern has become part of our faith, that all of us, indeed all of creation, needs rest in order to be who God created us to be. And so we've committed ourselves to those patterns of stewardship, good management of creation and all our gifts, and Sabbath, knowing when we need to rest in order to be restored and not give in to the demands that keep us captive, the demands to always be doing, productive. Like all our faith practices, we struggle with these at different times. These are ongoing challenges to us to do this as well as we can, knowing that this is part of a faithful way of life. Well, maybe these are ideas that are not new to you, that you're relatively familiar with, but maybe in your life you haven't called them stewardship and Sabbath. Now, if you hear those words around church, those very churchy words, maybe you'll have a better sense of what we mean by them and are trying to do with them. Thanks for everybody. You've been doing a great job. Thanks for sending in those reflections. Please do that again this week, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.